Okay, we have a green box, we have a live counter ticking up, so we should now be live, which of course means welcome back to the Storytime Network. We are back with Hollow Knight, and we are rejoined by Jack.
Ew.
I was gonna try and do some clever joke thing, but I couldn't think of anything, so I just...
To substitute for a clever joke, let us welcome Jack to his first installment of our recurring segment. Fuzzy doesn't understand fetishes.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. Also, just so you guys are aware, the sound is occasionally glitching out a tiny bit here and there, so I might miss fragments of sentences.
Right.
I could try switching to my other computer, but... Oh, wow, that was fast.
Not dead yet, I just lost a life. It's fine. I still have no idea what I'm supposed to do with that bit, but... It is what it is.
So, anyway, ignoring the game for a moment... Jack, to introduce this recurring segment to you, we talk about specific fetishes that, not in a kink-shaming way, more in a just, like, scientific curiosity way.
Well, it depends on what you mean by fetishes, because if preferences in, like, specific body types or specific sex acts, then that's a whole different thing than, say, like, people who are into bondage.
Like, basically, all of the above, yes. So our first installment of this segment was feet. Why do people like them? What's up with that? What was our second one, Mel?
I mean, I think we generally went around sort of body parts. I think we also touched on armpits.
Yeah, that's weird. Why are people into that?
So I can kind of see an evolutionary argument for feet, kind of, being like, oh, hey, they have healthy feet. That may be a good partner because they take care of their feet and or are healthy, etc., etc. I don't know, though. I have long since tried to stopped trying to justify those things by way of science.
So, yes, here is one that there's some spicy takes that I'm allowed to have for once, in this one. This is a fetish that I learned about only recently because, as we all know, that is not really my bag. And this is one that I could argue, when taken to its logical extreme, is actually one of the few that is possibly amoral.
Which one? Sorry.
No, I haven't mentioned it yet. And the fetish in question is breeding.
Yes, the classic breeding kink.
Yeah. So I don't really even know what it entails. I've just seen the word thrown around. But from my cursory understanding outside looking in, it is exactly what it says on the tin.
Well, yeah, it's being turned on by the concept of basically breeding. Yeah. Yes. Nothing inherently wrong with that one, and that one is like probably the one that has the strongest argument made for, being grounded in any form of biology or evolutionary mechanism.
But the reason I'm saying that's one of the few that has real moral and ethical complications is as follows. If you're doing it as a kink, but you actually end up bringing a new life into the world that you're not that interested in, because from what I understand, most people with a breeding fetish aren't really interested in, raising a child. So, I would posit that it is not morally or ethically okay to bring a life into the world that you have no interest in raising properly.
Oh, of course.
And that is why oh, Mel, yes, please discuss.
Well,
It- it-
there's an argument to be made that as long as you ensure that the child gets a proper raising, whether through adoption or by your own
Yeah,
merits,
that's what I was gonna say.
I would argue
like,
it is ethical. Because you don't have to personally raise them if you can ensure that that the child is adopted by someone who will raise them well.
Counterpoint,
Yeah.
in a realistic context, how many people who end up with children because of their breeding kink are actually that responsible?
We don't know. Hard to say.
I would
We don't
argue
really have the
based on-
statistics on this.
I would argue, based on just my understanding of human nature, probably not a lot.
Again, hard to say because, again, we do not have the statistics on this.
Yes, but we
Damn,
can
those bombs really
infer.
screwed you, Mel.
We can infer, though.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, that's been fetishes Fuzzy doesn't understand.
Okay. So I assume you understand most fetishes then.
Well, that's the segment for this week done. There'll be more.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but
Okay. Cool.
don't worry. There's a lot of fetishes I don't understand. So this is going to be a recurring segment for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to be fair, I did find a meme that perfectly encapsulated my issue with like stupidly large breasts.
Oh?
Yeah. Stupidly, ginormous gazongas.
Give me a second to find it. Probably sure it's on my phone somewhere. I think it's past here. Sometimes I see things that are so absurdly horny that it circles back around to being sexless. Like when I see really horny art of female characters where the sexiness is so generic, their boobs are cartoonishly large and they have a waist the size of an atom and some vacant ahegao stare, etc. I'm just like, this is so uninteresting and kind of repulsive. I think I'd be more aroused by a tin can.
Mm.
You know, that is kind of... Okay.
Yeah, sometimes it just loops around from being... At a certain point, and it depends on the person, it varies from person to person, at a certain point, sex traits can only be exaggerated so much before they become just horrifying or disgusting.
Right. Let's make some more enemies, because as we all know, that's something I'm good at. We've talked about media literacy in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Media literacy is important, yes.
And we've talked about how a large portion of the population has very low standards. Or, no standards at all.
Yes, because you know how it is.
With regards to media, especially because, like, they don't, and this is how things like AOT and Nart and Black get popular, is because people don't really want to engage in like critical thinking or like anything of that sort. So, I would like to posit that this lack of standards does not only apply to media. It also...
Oh, no, you're correct. It applies to beer as well.
Huh?
It applies to beer, for example.
Well, okay, look, it also applies to the horny side of the world.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Pornography.
Okay, you know what? Screw it. I'm gonna switch over because
Okay.
my audio is absolute garbage right now. Give me a sec.
Okay, that's fair. Mill, you heard me, right?
Yes.
So, I would like to posit that similar to what you said, a lot of people have completely removed the concept of standards from their pornography, so that as long as it is even like the suggestion of something erotic or sexual, their monkey brains immediately go awooga.
I mean, I don't think you're entirely wrong.
Okay, elaborate. Where do you think I am wrong?
I don't know. Maybe it's. So let me just confirm something, Fuzzy. You're Ace, right?
I'm probably in that vicinity, yes. I say that I'm not trying to hedge. I just don't know for sure myself.
No. I'm not. Dude, I'm in no position to.
Yes, no. We believe me. Yes, I understand.
No position to like get on
Can you,
anyone for
yeah?
hedging. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. What was it you were saying earlier, Fuzzy?
The idea that not only do people not have standards with regards to media and are, as a result, are able to consume garbage, the same holds true for pornography.
Oh yeah, no, of course.
And so that even if it's like just a suggestion of eroticism or sexuality, their monkey brains light up and go awooga.
Awooga, yeah.
Yes. And Mill was rebutting to some extent. Mill, go on.
To some extent, are we the like? Me and you, particularly, like the right person to be talking about sexual attraction.
I think that's... So here's the thing. I do believe we do have the qualifications because we at least have a sense of aesthetics.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, I feel like my taste probably approach the average the most out of the three of us, and even then I have some tastes that would definitely not be considered normal by a lot of people's standards. Because, like, yeah. Not everyone's going to have normal taste per se, but, like, I don't think I have, like, most normal tastes, even then.
But like what I'm trying to say is that for most people, they see a naked person and they're immediately like awooga.
Takes more than that to get me going.
Huh?
Takes more than that for me personally.
Well, yes, but like that's because you have standards, and what I'm trying to suggest is most people don't.
Hmm.
Do you get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying.
Like, what I'm trying to suggest is that, and you know, I have a theory about this.
Mm-hmm.
One word: repression.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of parts of the world where sexuality gets repressed because of cultural and/or religious reasons.
Yeah, and as a result, I feel like a lot of people just don't really have a very high threshold for arousal.
Either that, or they just don't have healthy processing mechanisms for when they do get aroused. Or both.
All of the above. Why not both?
Okay, no, las dos.
Yeah, it's one of those things that has always fascinated me because I'm like, I can understand to a certain extent, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
in large part, it is a physiological response, And even people who have, like, been tempered through repeated exposure are not immune to physiological response.
No, of course. Or yeah, you do got the people who need the bonkening, of course.
Yes.
Have to work that in there.
No, good.
There is. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
But there is also just the consideration to be made for, like, some people just haven't been given the knowledge and experience they need to actually, develop those healthy processing mechanisms,
Yeah, and it's one of those things where knowing about it doesn't necessarily make it any easier to process, because we also have to consider that different people have different physiological thresholds.
Yep.
Right? Like, I'm not entirely sure, because this is a surprisingly little researched subject, but there's definitely situations where even if the threshold for arousal is low, the threshold for non-arousal, or like for no longer being aroused, is also varies.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things that is extremely personal and variable from person to person, and considering the sample size is about 8 billion humans, you're gonna get a lot of variance in there.
Mm-hmm.
Human variance is absolutely immense compared to a lot of other species. Like, if you take a look at, say, like, the average gecko, they're going to look more or less the same across a species, and they're going to engage in similar behaviors. But humans are much more varied than most animals.
Well, okay. In terms of behavior, yes.
Physiologically and behaviorally.
Well, in terms of appearance, I would argue that geckos can probably tell each other apart pretty easily.
Yes, that
Right,
goes without
so-
saying. But, like, from the outside looking in, the only species that really has as much the only species that have as much variance as humans are domesticated species like dogs and cats.
I was just about to mention dogs, yeah, because, like, the thing about dogs, though, is that even
It's artificial
with
selection.
even with the artificial selection, and even with the variance within the species of good old Canis familiaris.
Yep.
Yeah, I believe they're Canis lupus familiaris, I think.
Yes, because they can interbreed with wolves.
Yeah, I believe they are genetically still technically wolves, which I'm staring at my dog right now. Yes, I'm looking at my dog right now. It's very hard to imagine. But no, what I was gonna say is that even with the variance shown in dogs, that's only between breeds.
Mm-hmm.
But a breed tends to be very internally consistent in terms of appearance and behavior.
Right.
Like, yes, labs are different from chihuahuas, but most labs are pretty much the same, and most chihuahuas are pretty much the same with respect to other labs and chihuahuas.
Yep.
There's maybe some temperamental differences, but that is in nowhere approaching the differences you see in from human to human.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, human variance is just immense. Which is just absolutely fascinating to contemplate,
I mean, it's one of those One might argue that it's one of the things that separates humans from animals. Like, I know people like to say that, oh, humans are just animals, and while that is true in large part, and is more true for some people than others, if you know what I'm saying, by that I'm referring to the bigots.
Yeah, they are
Because
assholes.
I did realize that that could be misconstrued as, like, a bigoted comment in and of itself. But no, I'm referring to the bigots, who are, like, just dicks. And
Yes, they lean furthest into our most basic instincts of tribalism, and ergo they are the closest to animals out of all of us.
exactly, that is what I was trying to imply. However, I realized the moment I said it that it could be misconstrued, so it's important to clarify these things.
Yeah, the clarification and specificity is important.
Yes. Remember, kids, the paradox of tolerance is not as complicated as you'd think.
Mainly revolves around telling bigots to fuck off.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yes, but Mill, I know you're playing the game and it's harder to concentrate, but do you have any input on what we've said so far? I want to make sure this is an inclusive discussion.
Not really. This is really not my area of expertise.
It's
That is
fine.
It's fine. You can just make stuff up and, like, hope for the best.
I can do that with history. I've got a degree there. I can't do it with, like, human psychology or anything like that.
One might argue that history is a case study of human psychology on a macroscopic scale.
Mm-hmm.
You could, but I'm not going to.
Okay, let's go into something a bit more general then. If you do good things for bad reasons, is it a good thing or a bad thing?
Yes.
Ha ha. Very funny.
I am hilarious, yes. But yeah, so saying it's bad to do good things for bad reasons is kind of a little disingenuous, because the end result is still that a good thing has been done, regardless of the reasoning behind it.
So, at the risk of getting into skirting the edge of modern politics,
Boy.
where I'm questioning this is the principle of bread in circuses.
Mm.
Do you get where I'm coming
ahead.
from there? Where if
Free to elaborate.
So if a regime that is perhaps not the greatest decides to provide the bread and circuses as a means of more reliably controlling the population, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, see, that in and of itself is a bit of a different thing altogether, because it is using a good thing for the purposes of engineering a bad thing, whereas just doing a good thing for selfish reasons, like, say, you help someone across the street because you want to impress an onlooker. You still, at the end of the day, help someone across the street, even if your motives weren't pure for it. Which is, at the end of the day, very different from doing something positive for someone in hopes of manipulating the system to benefit you. Because the latter is much more malicious than the former.
See, I
And it
guess
actually
maybe
can have harmful consequences.
I suppose this is just my own specific neurodivergent worldview. I don't really see a difference between those two things. Like,
I mean, Fuzzy, you do need to remember that I'm also neurodivergent.
yeah,
In a
but we're
different way,
different
yeah.
kinds of Yes, that's what I'm trying to say. That's why I said my specific neurodivergent worldview.
Okay.
I didn't say my general neurodivergent worldview, because, like, my specific neurodivergent worldview is different from your specific neurodivergent worldview.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's one of those things where it's important to clarify. And I did try to clarify, but I still got misconstrued, so I'm sure our audience can understand how difficult it is on a regular basis.
Yep.
But yeah, it's like, as an autistic person, I kind of... Some things with regards to ethics, morality, and empathy are a bit more difficult for me to grasp. And I'm not even trying to generalize autism, I'm just saying my specific presentation of autism. Some of these things are very difficult for me to grasp, and that's why I'm like... From where I'm standing, those two things don't have too much of a difference. And I don't really understand the overall, I suppose, consequences on people from a more moral or ethical point of view.
And personally, I think. So do you want to take a more consequentialist point of view, or do you want to take a point of view more along the lines of, hey, the motives are bad, ergo any positivity from the actions is invalidated? Or are you trying to take like a different tack from those two?
I don't know what the first one is, and I disagree with the second one.
Consequentialism is basically the consequences are more important, that are the most important thing to consider when discussing an action.
The whole intent doesn't matter as much principle.
Yes.
I feel like it's not as...
there, Mill.
What was that?
Oh, that looks like a hell of a hairy situation.
Yeah.
You're in quite a bit of thorny situation there, huh?
Boo. Boo.
Hold on. Yeah, sorry, Fuzzy.
I envy you for being on desktop. I can't wait for... I'm sure soundboards will be brought to mobile eventually. After it's through testing. I can't wait for that. But, anyway, to talk a bit less about something, so morally complex and in fear of being accused of philosophy, I still take great offense to the fact... Okay, that one just didn't... No, that just didn't... Okay. But, I still take great offense to the fact that Mill accused me of philosophy the other day.
I mean, what is philosophy, if not, tell me why? Tell me why thing is. Thing is because...
No, there's philosophy. But no, the other... But yeah, so rather than being accused of philosophy, let's talk about dogs for a moment.
Alright.
I do love dogs, yes.
We're all familiar with the Immortal's Dilemma, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Wait, what dilemma now?
The Immortal's Dilemma. The whole idea that eternal life is miserable if everyone else isn't also immortal.
I've also actually got a counterpoint to that, but I'll let you do your thing first.
Actually, no, I'm kind of floundering, so feel free to present your counterpoints. Mill first.
Well, it's not necessarily a counterpoint, just an alternative view. The Immortal's Dilemma is so often used for, drama. Why have people not been using it for comedy?
Yeah. It
sure
could be a source of
they're-
great black comedy.
No, I'm not even saying, like, fucking, oh no, all my friends are dying, which, Jack, is why I'm not watching Freerin. But more a case of, like, so for Immortals, their sense of time is going to get screwed up because they live for so long, right?
Mm-hmm. For the most part, yes.
Therefore, when they actually have to do something on a time limit, it's going to feel different from our sense of a time limit, right?
Mm-hmm. So, like that one post about an elf walking out on his family to get cigarettes because he doesn't realize that 30 years is very different for an elf than for a human.
I'm not even talking about that, because that's tragic. I'm talking about an immortal being given a year to do something and acting like a university student who has to do a 5,000-word essay for the next day.
I have to admit, that is an approach I have not seen. I've seen the Immortals played for comedy before, but the idea of, like...
Usually slapstick.
Yeah, but the idea of, like, pulling a reversal based on their sense of time is actually very unique. You should, like, get
Very
on
clever,
that.
yeah.
I can't take credit for the
I'm planning on
idea.
writing a
I saw
book
it
about
on
Immortals.
I saw it on fucking Tumblr post, so I can't take full credit for the idea.
Mm-hmm. Also, Mill, I don't think you really have the best idea as to what Freyrin's actually about, because I've read some of the manga, and what you're discussing is only really, like, the base premise of the series. Of, not even the base premise, like...
I've discouraged Mill as someone who has read a lot of the manga.
Oh, okay.
Yes, no, believe me, I know what I like, and I've got a pretty good idea of what Mill likes, and yeah, neither of us are interfering.
How close is it to the general sense of To Your Eternity, Jack?
It's fairly distinct, I'd say. Because they're two very different takes, So Freyrin only really takes a long view timescale for, like, the initial prologue section of the story, and that's it. Otherwise, it's focused on a fairly short time scale. Whereas To Your Eternity takes a long view for most of the story outside of, like, individual arcs.
The problem with Freyrin
You see,
is
like,
even when
century-long time skips in To Your Eternity.
the
Whereas that's
problem,
not really the case in Freyrin.
the problem with Freyrin is even though it takes a short view time scale, that only, like, serves to distract you from the inevitability of the long view time scale. And as people as me and Mill tend to think about that sort of thing, even when it's not outwardly present, and that's why I discouraged him from getting too invested.
I don't know. I really like stories that explore the melancholy of just, like,
I don't!
having a very
Exactly!
Don't!
lifespan.
I'm telling you this now. I do not like stories like that. They make me sad. I don't like sad.
That's the thing, Jack. Me and Mill do not consume media for melancholy. We have enough of that in our real lives.
I mean, I do too, but I still do it. It's cathartic to me.
Jack,
That's
you're the
because-
person who watches 20 plus shows a season. I'm fairly sure you're a bit of a masochist.
He's got a point, Jack.
Maybe. I haven't tried that out before, but maybe.
But no, like, there are two distinct schools of thought that I have noticed when it comes to media consumption in this regard. The escapist school of thought and the immersive school of thought. You and Gen belong to the immersive school of thought. Me and Mill belong to the escapist school of thought.
It honestly depends on my mood, because sometimes I will, like, go for something more on the escapist side.
I mean,
Sometimes
we're not talking about a binary here. Because sometimes I like sad stuff. Generally, it's only at the end of a story, but sometimes I do like it. I just don't want it to be the whole, aspect of the story.
The base premise. as you said. But yes, but Jack, you also said you have some counterpoints to my point about the Immortal's Dilemma. Please.
So the thing about the Immortal's Dilemma is that it's very focused on the idea that you will always be sad because you lose companions because of the lifespan difference. One of the counterpoints is you get to meet so many different people across such a large time scale that you can still make friends even if you will inevitably lose them. And to give you an example, a reason for why that's not necessarily bad. Why do you think people get dogs even though dogs live so much shorter than humans?
I was going to bring up dogs as an example of that, like pets in general. But at this
there are very few pets that live as long or longer than humans. But anyways, there is also the point to be made for there are a lot of experiences that no regular human can have because we have such limited time on this earth. What I think would be very neat to explore is just like the ability to have so many different experiences across such a long span of time because you have that time.
So, okay. On the one hand, I can understand where you're coming from. On the other hand, I do feel 2 points. First of all, I feel that the comparison with pets is a bit reductive because
I know
while
it's reductive, but it's the closest thing I have to an actual cogent comparison. Actually, no, it's not. It's not because there are people who make friends with terminally ill people, even though they know that people who are terminally ill have a much shorter time on this earth than an average person does, than someone who doesn't have a terminal illness. Those friendships are still there, even though it's destined to not last.
So I think the counterpoint to that is part and parcel of the counterpoint is that because the time scale is so large, the scale of loss also increases exponentially. And human beings sort of have are inherently limited in our emotional capacity. And that includes our capacity to handle loss. And again, here's the thing. We are operating this under the premise that the immortal in question still has a human mind. Because if they don't have a human mind, then all bets are off.
Parameters in general, really.
Yes. If not, then all bets are off. But under the assumption that the parameters are roughly human, then there is only so much loss. Even if the friendships and relationships are meaningful, there's only so much loss a person can take before they break down. And while for most human beings a lifetime is not necessarily enough to accrue that amount of loss, stretched over a long enough period of time, because one has to remember, loss never really goes away. I say this as someone who's lost people. It to a certain extent, yes, it gets easier to deal with, but that scar remains forever.
Yeah, no. Everyone who says all wounds heal kind of forgets that healed wounds still leave scars.
Yeah, so the scar remains forever, and so if you have to deal with it over a long enough time span, you're going to end up more scar than not. Right? Humans have a limited capacity for that. That's why I think eventually you can perhaps spend the first few centuries of immortality living in the moment and cherishing what you have, but eventually it's going to wear you down. Like, time can erode, like, just a light breeze can erode a mountain given enough time, and the human mind is hardly a mountain. It's more like a scraggly little rock.
So the thing is, what are we assuming for the time span of immortality here? Are we assuming that the person is? Are we assuming it's simply long-livedness, or are we assuming it is permanent, complete, irreversible immortality? That they cannot die no matter what, under any circumstances?
Well, obviously, it's that one, because if you can just kill yourself, that changes the dynamic completely. If you just kill yourself or choose to age normally, that just, like, that changes it completely.
Because, because what I'm saying is, like, immortality is something that's been portrayed in many different ways across fiction. And some of it has been very interesting. Some of it has been very stupid. But I do feel like the explorations of what it means to live a long or short life are always just so fascinating to me. Because it always gives me the sense that, hey, if a person can value a life in which they are suffering from dealing with so much pain and loss from having lived so long and lost so much, then I can value my own life in which I have not even come close to encountering nearly that much loss.
It really comes down to it comes down to that, isn't it? It's like me and Mill had a long talk on the fallacy of relative privation the other day, and it comes down to the fact that there are some people who can look at someone who's worse off than them and feel better about themselves, and then there are people who can't do that.
There are also people, there are people who see someone suffering and feel like, oh, that person is suffering. I wish I could do something to help.
Yes,
and
so
I do feel that impulse as well.
Yeah,
at the same time,
there's you could broadly say there's three categories. You see someone who's worse off than you, and you feel empathy. You see someone who's worse off than you, and if you feel better about your own situation, or you see someone who's worse off than you, and you kind of just don't feel anything. You just feel depressed still, because, them being worse off doesn't make you any better off.
So, there is a limit, I think, on the first category, because I will admit, like, at a certain point, seeing someone who is worse off than me will just make me depressed, depending on how bad their situation is.
Well, obviously, yeah, relativity is a major thing, but I'm saying that even within those limits, the same person, assuming it's within the limits of all categories, may feel different to different people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm trying to say. Like, I would argue that I'm definitely in that category where it doesn't really make me feel any different about my own situation. Mill, what would you say? Which category do you think you fall in?
So what were the three categories again? Just remind me.
You see someone who's worse off than you and you feel better about yourself. You see someone who's worse off than you and you feel empathy for them. And you see someone who's worse off than you and you still don't feel better about yourself because you're still no better off, even if relatively they're worse off. Also, these categories are not necessarily mutually exclusive.
Yeah, I was going to say those.
I would say I fall mostly between the first two. Mostly.
I'd say I probably fall mostly between the latter two.
And I have never had any qualms about admitting that I'm a relatively low empathy individual. So I'm firmly in the
you're basically in the corner of the third one.
Yeah, because I'm not a complete sociopath.
No, of course not.
I do have empathy. But I also, it's a relatively low amount of empathy, and I have been noted by medical professionals as having some sociopathic tendencies. Which I'm sure you've noticed over the time we've known each other.
Yeah. Can't say I haven't.
Ha! Mill?
Oh no, I have. But at the same time, you're not entirely sociopathic. Your stance on rape and fiction really, puts that to bed.
Yes, no, I have a, I
Oh,
still
God.
have. I also like. I think what's even more like, not more, but something that's equally distressing to me in both real life and fiction, but because it's easier to avoid in fiction, or because it's more easy to be exposed to in fiction, so it comes up more in fiction, is I've always been. I believe I made my stance clear that I have nothing. Not only do I have nothing against sex workers, I also have respect for people who choose that as a profession, because it's like not an easy profession. But I one of the things that really distresses me, and so I try to avoid it as much as possible, is people who are forced into sex work by circumstance.
Oh yeah, no, that can be
Not-
real
not-
rough.
Yeah, not that they're victims of trafficking or anything, because that is
No.
like distressing in its
That-
own
that-
way. But just people for whom either poverty or just general circumstances forces them to ply that trade, even though they'd rather not.
Yeah, no, that's
So-
always felt like a bit rough to me.
Mio
The,
and
the, the, the
Dororo.
reason, huh?
Mio and Dororo.
Look, that is why I dropped that series, because
And
I
that's fair.
I had a violent panic attack at
Fair
that
enough.
one
Yeah.
episode,
Yeah, that
And
one
I
was a
could
bit
not-
rough.
and I could not watch that series after that.
Mm-hmm.
It just I even bringing it up is like making me feel unpleasant. But it's one of those things where it's just one of those things that, because it's something that happens in real life, I think it's even more distressing for me.
Yeah, I get that.
It's like I that's why I had that caveat of I have a great deal of respect for sex workers who choose that profession. The problem is there's a lot of sex workers who don't necessarily choose it, even if they're not like trafficked,
Mm-hmm.
but rather that is their only path to survival, and that's just something and it's not from a place of repulsion, but or rather what repulses me is not the sex workers themselves, but like the idea that circumstances can be that desperate, and the system and society can put people into such desperate straits.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, as we've established, I have very complicated views on the sex work industry in general. Because, while I'm like, there's plenty of people who have chosen that as a profession, and honestly, all power to them. Like, it can be like, you go, whatever floats your boat. But like, the fact remains that probably the majority of the industry is composed of participants who are reluctant or unwilling in some way or another.
Majority?
I would say that, okay, maybe not the majority is reluctant or unwilling, but I would say a lot of them are in a situation where there are no better alternatives. How about that?
Mm-hmm. I mean, in some cases, people do legitimately choose it because they feel like it, because they
Yeah,
want
no,
it.
I'm saying that's like, I have no problem with that. Like, that's a personal choice that I respect, and honestly, it's a hard job, so. I
Well, that
mean, it's
was
great if you
unfair.
enjoy it, but even if you don't, if you choose it, then, it's like, all power to you. But, like, just like statistically speaking, I feel like a lot of people who engage in that industry are perhaps on the lower in the lower tax brackets.
I
Like, I'm
suppose,
articulating this badly, but do you guys know what I'm trying to say?
to an extent, yeah, but I mean, are you talking about people who literally have no other choice? Or... Because I'm willing to bet...
I wouldn't go that far. I would just say that there's definitely a lot of people whose other choices are not as viable, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
I should also point out, because of the nature of the industry, especially in a lot of parts of the world, and just because, there's a lot of the world where there's a stigma, religious component, and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Due to the nature of the industry, it's hard to do a census. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, because it's illegal in a lot of places for
Yes.
honestly bullshit reasons.
Yeah, so it's like...
Yeah, it's kind of dumb how it is illegal. Come on, come over here. There we go.
But yeah, I would
mean,
say that a
Jim
lot of the
Jeffries...
stats are guesswork
Jim Jeffries did a
based
really
on
good...
existing pattern.
Jim Jeffries did a really good segment on the stupidity of the illegality of prostitution.
Yeah, no, it's just really dumb, and it's a lot of it, at least in Europe and America, is based heavily on Christian social norms and all that bullshit.
Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we tried to send the Puritans away. Not our fault.
Yeah, well, it wound up fucking us over. So it wasn't as bad as the Calvinists. The Calvinists were just... Ugh.
But yeah, in general, religious views are probably the biggest component of why sex work is illegal in like most places. Honestly, I feel like that is probably true. That like at least on paper, I feel like sex work is illegal in more places than it's legal in.
I believe so, yes.
Do you want to do Google?
Jack, you're the one with most
Yeah,
convenient.
I'll look.
Yeah, but yeah, the thing is, a lot of this is based on guesswork because it's hard to do a census because like if you're a sex worker in a place where that's at least questionably legal, if not outright illegal, then you're definitely not exactly going to be keen on volunteering.
I suppose the other
All
thing...
right, let's see. Holy fuck. Okay, then. So, in every U.S. state except for Nevada, it is illegal, naturally.
Well, we knew that, obviously.
In roughly 2/3 of Asian countries, including basically everything in East Asia except for Taiwan,
It's legal or illegal?
it is legal in Taiwan.
Oh, and it's illegal everywhere else.
Everywhere else in East Asia, except for there are a couple places, but I think it's just like Hong Kong and Macau, where it's in a state of abolitionism where prostitution is legal. but like brothels and pimping are not, and there is no regulation. That's also the case for India, Kazakhstan, and several European, Sub-Saharan African, and South and Central American countries, as well as a few provinces in Australia. So basically, half of South America is in abolitionism, and the other half is legalized, except for a few in northern South America.
No.
Oh, so that suggests to me that it might be either legal or more or less legal in more parts of the world than not.
Well, that's just South and Central America. You'll never guess which region has basically every single country save one have it illegal. You'll never guess.
I feel like I can guess.
Go ahead, guess then.
It can't be Europe, can it?
It's not Europe.
I mean, obviously North America is what comes to mind because the Puritans. But
no, North America. It depends on how you define North America. If you include Central and Latin America or not.
Well, what
and
is
if
it
you do
then?
It's the Middle East. The Middle East and Northern Africa.
I thought you were gonna be like. I thought it was a trick question. Obviously, the Middle East is the first thing that comes to mind, but like.
Yeah. No, the Middle East and Northern Africa are the strictest overall.
Middle East doesn't exist.
Look,
Yes.
Mill, we know what you're talking about, but it's just like, give us a suggestion for an alternative name and we'll use it, but like...
I don't have one! One doesn't exist! It's too diverse! Stop grouping it
Right.
together! Stop
Yeah,
grouping
believe it
it
or
the
not-
fuck together!
Believe it or not, it's actually legal in Tunisia. And also Turkey, for some reason. Huh. It is, of course, legal in Austria, Germany, Greece, and a few other European countries, and it is in the state of abolitionism in most of the rest of Europe. So France has it at the state of neo-abolitionism, where it is illegal to buy sex work and for third-party involvement, but is legal to sell sex, which I don't know how that's supposed to work.
No, it's just the stupidest thing.
That's
It's
also
how...
the case for Canada, Ireland, Northern Ireland, Iceland, and two other countries in Scandinavia. I don't
It's
remember.
stupid.
I don't remember.
There's some places that do that with drugs as well, where it's like...
You can use it, but you can't buy it, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just
How the fuck
stupid.
does that work?
It's like...
The
yeah,
math
that's
doesn't match there.
Yeah, it's the most stupid one. Though I can understand kind of the logic behind it, even though it's like moon logic, where you are protecting the rights of the seller, but you are still subjecting the buyer to the
It's still funky.
constraints of the law. It's stupid. I will fully say, I say that as someone who lives in one of those countries. It is just dumb.
Yeah, it is decriminalized in New Zealand and a few other countries.
But yeah, my friend and I were like in New York, just sort of going around the place, and we played a little game. And it's relevant to this is in that the game was quite simply try and guess if the massage parlor is actually a place for massages or a brothel.
Oh yeah, no, that's the case in the law of America. At least from what I've
It's
heard.
against the law. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
Oh yeah, no, that's the case.
Yeah, but like, no, it's just like, because I have to... How often do you think there's mix-ups?
Oh, all the fucking time.
Where like a person walks into one of these places looking for banging, but is like, oh no, we don't do that here. Or a person.
I mean, the reverse is also
genuinely
probably
thinks-
true as well.
Yes, no, and people just like walk in for like because they have back pain or something, and then they're like,
I just want.
"Hey,
I'm
why are people getting naked?"
I just want a massage, man.
Yeah, so it's like I do wonder what the proportion is. Again, this is one of those things where you can't really take a census. For example, there was a massage parlor across the street from my high school. And to this day, I'm still not entirely sure what kind it is. But
That's
the
funny.
evidence, but for the most part, I believe it is the non-brothel kind.
I mean, I don't imagine they'd be operating a brothel kind of right across from a fucking high school.
Yes, that is the only thing, and also I believe for like our high school had a. You know how high schools have events, and one of the events I distinctly remember is there was a raffle in which one of the prizes was a spa day at that massage parlor. And I have to imagine that they wouldn't be able to get away with that if it was the sex kind.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine the dilemma if there's only one teacher that knows that, though.
Oh, that would
yeah,
be
no,
hilarious.
because
And
if you said it, you'd be outing yourself.
Yeah, and it's just like, oh god, do I say something? Do I say something?
Yeah, sadly it did not end up happening because I'm pretty sure it was just a legit spa sort of
I mean,
thing.
that's the thing. For plausible deniability, I'm willing to bet that the massage parlors that are brothels are able to give a legitimate massage experience. It's just that there's something extra on the end.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe I'm having my mind rotted by too much porn. I don't know.
I mean, it is one of those things where I don't really. What do you think the origin of this particular form of brothel is? Is it okay? I feel bad for this because I'm saying this from a place of ignorance. Are we brothel? Like, is that not okay?
What was that? I did not hear much of that.
Are we allowed to say the word brothel?
What
Is that an outdated term? Like, are we doing? Is that a bad word?
I think it's outdated.
Because I'm saying it from I'm not saying it from a place of judgment. As I've said, I don't have anything against sex work inherently. Just like I don't know all of the terminology because I think it should be obvious. I don't exactly interface with that culture or lifestyle. All of my knowledge of it is like second or even third hand.
Oh, I don't like that. Ow.
Oof. Dead.
Ow. I may have got myself stuck here. Ow. I may have got myself stuck here.
You should ask your stepsister for help because you're stuck.
Yep, there we go.
You know, because we're
But yeah,
talking about...
Fuzzy, I imagine it's a case of, like, it legitimately happened, like, organically one time, and they were like, oh shit, I think we've got something here.
I have to imagine it's also probably... There's some convergent evolution involved, right?
Well, I mean, look, again, this is not my world, so I don't know for sure, but I would imagine that people do go to be relaxed, and it may be a case of, you know, one time after a session, let's say, a masseuse who happened to be trained, or a a prostitute who happened to be trained in massage was like, "You still seem a little bit tense. Do you wanna? I'm a good masseuse, you know, and you know."
No. I also imagine that the reverse could have happened, where a masseuse was offered money and was like, you know what, $20 is $20, right? Like,
I mean, it's hard to say which way it went.
no. What I'm trying to suggest is that it went both ways.
Oh my!
The soundboard, Jack.
I know. I wasn't reaching at the moment.
Yes, no, thank you. But yeah, I have to imagine that it happened independently, sort of all over the place, just as a product of human nature. Where it's like, I'm sure some of it arose from sex workers who were trained in massage, and some of it arose from masseuses who were like willing to do it for money, right? So, and it kind of just emerged. But yeah, I see massage parlors all over the place, and I'm always curious as to which kind it is. And I do think there is a distinct difference. Because while a brothel can act as a normal massage parlor, I'm sure most normal massage parlors will not be willing to act as brothels. So it's not a completely it's not a completely bidirectional relationship.
Oh, of course not.
Right? They're not completely interchangeable, and that's why I think it's like fascinating to think of the difference. Because like a lot of these places just advertise. Some of them are like don't try to like be hidden in an out of the way corner. Some of them are just like out there on like in a crowded strip mall, and I'm just like, I wonder sometimes. Is like when I see like just when you're
God, I've just remembered something.
Related to the game or related to sex workers?
Related to the conversation at hand.
Go on.
You just said that there were massage parlors all around, and at least some of them were actually brothels where you got a happy ending.
Yeah.
Me and a friend dragged another friend away from a massage parlor in Vancouver.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh boy.
He made an appointment.
And which kind was it?
We dragged him away before he could go to it.
And well, why did you drag him away?
Because I don't know. I can't remember exactly. I think we just thought he was being dumb.
I mean, he might well have been.
I mean, yes, he was a very dumb person, but
Well,
He might have known what he was doing.
I don't know. We were also underage at the time. I should point that out. So
okay,
Oh,
that
yeah.
just things. That sheds. Well, actually, it depends. Like, I'm pretty sure age of majority. How old were you?
Like 14.
Oh no, that's the. Oh, that is not okay. Okay, yeah. Well, okay. If they had any sense, even if it was a brothel, I'm sure
I know
the
it's
management
just.
would have just like kept it PG-13.
I know, but it is just the case that you were just talking about brothels in Canada. I was like, or massage brothels in Canada. I was like, I dragged a friend away from there once. Oh shit.
Yeah,
That was a particularly
14
eventful. Yeah, that was
14 is way too young. Even though I'm pretty sure in Ontario, I think the age of majority is 16. I'm not entirely sure, but I do know you can become an emancipated minor at 16, and also I think it's a 16 or 17. It's like relatively low, which is kind of yikes.
But yeah, that was a particularly eventful day at that particular mall as well, because ended up berating some dude for selling a shitty product to my friend. And to be fair, the friend was an idiot. He should have known better. Because it was one of those,
Was
like...
it the same friend, or do you just have a lot of idiot friends?
Different friend. Had a lot of idiot friends.
I mean, you were 14, that's understandable.
That tracks, yep.
Because it was one of those fucking rubber wristbands that the dude was, like, claiming, like, help balance and improved health and all that bullshit. And he paid...
And your friend fell for that.
Yeah, and he paid, like, $30 for it.
Okay, at that point, I feel like he's just like...
No, he was a fucking idiot. I'm not even gonna deny that. I don't think he would deny that to a certain extent. But he only got his money back when we told, because it was a rugby tour, and we told the head of PE, a guy called Mr. Hale, who glared at the guy who then gave my friend his money back.
Yeah, that would do it.
But
I just cannot get over the fact that your 14-year-old friend made an appointment. He knew he was hoping it was a brothel, wasn't he?
I don't know. Okay, probably. He'd already had a massage on a ferry. I don't know whether he just got a taste for them, or he was hoping for something else. I really don't know. That guy was even more impenetrable than the other one in terms of stupidity.
I mean, depending on what he was into, perhaps being penetrable was the problem, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh my.
Nope.
Thank you, Jack. As reluctant as it was, thank you for the acknowledgement, at least. But yeah, that's just like... Sometimes, in the dead of night, an impulsive thought scurries into my brain where I'm just like... What if I just went on a tour across the city to try and do a census? Like, what if I just did a survey and went from, like...
You'd
massage
probably be best
parlors
off just doing an online anonymous survey.
Yeah.
Well, no. I was thinking I would go full Gordon Ramsay undercover boss situation. And, like, see if I could get a professional makeup team. To give me a disguise.
Oh, you're going to be the master of disguise?
Turtle.
I swear, that's the one good joke in that movie.
It's not even... Look, I have a soft spot for that movie because I watched it at a formative age.
What movie is this?
So did I, but retroactively, looking back at the movie, it's very bad.
It's incredibly awful. However, for the longest time, I thought the main character was played by Mike Myers.
To be fair, Dana Carvey was also an SNL alum.
Yeah, look, Dana Carvey and Mike Myers are basically the same guy. In that movie, at least. Look...
I still don't know what movie you're talking about, I should point out.
The Master of Disguise.
Nope.
A very awful early 2000s movie.
Nope, never heard of that.
It's like Austin Powers, but really bad.
Austin Powers, but infinitely worse.
I mean, I never watched Austin Powers, so...
What?
How can you not have watched Austin Powers? I'm pretty sure that's like... don't they, like, make you watch that as part of your British indoctrination classes?
Nope.
Yeah, it's supposed to inoculate Brits from being driven away by James Bond parodies, I thought.
Never
We
watched
can
it.
do a watch-along. You know what? I've seen that there's been an increase in watch-alongs where the people watching just don't actually stream the thing they're watching, and they just react
They
to
just
it as
stream their reactions. Yeah.
Yes. So we should do that at some point. Are
you trying to turn us into reactors, Fuzzy?
Well, I think there's a difference between a watch along and a just plain reaction, but like, think of it more as, I think, rather than reaction, I would prefer it to be in the MST3K or Riff Tracks format. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because if we try to do a React thing, I'm worried that the Fine Bros might sue us.
I just learned recently that Abridgimon the movie was supposed to parody that. I did not make that connection.
Wow, okay. They said Fine Bros! They said the name!
No, I don't think they did.
Yes, they did! Right at the end, British dude says, fuck off, Toei, I mean fine bros, I mean fucking fuck.
I think I just didn't know who the Fine Bros were.
Fair enough, I guess, but like...
It's never seen, right? Like, that's why it's just like...
I mean, I didn't know about them before the controversy, but...
I did used to watch the React channel before the controversy. I don't really watch it much anymore, if at all.
I watched better reactors.
But no, I think, like, there's a fine line, but I think the React genre is nothing new. But I think MST3K is, like, the quintessential, like, the trope codifier. And I think the sad thing is that a lot of React channels have just drifted away from that into just watching a thing and grunting occasionally.
Again, though,
but like,
I watch good reactors.
Yes, I know we've discussed this, but like, I'm talking about the general React audience, but React audience and channels. But like, it's just like, when you're doing it from a place of parody or critical analysis, that's great. I love that.
Which is why I much prefer not watching CinemaSins, because they don't do that. Because that's garbage. Has CinemaSins, like, basically irreparably poisoned the discourse on film criticism?
So, I would like to say that especially earlier CinemaSins had some very valid criticisms and points.
It's just overall become a parody of itself at this point.
Not necessarily that. I think it's more that it's sort of found its niche and settled into it, and that niche is not as interesting as the initial premise. Because I do think the base premise of CinemaSins is more or less just pointing out tropes that are used badly, in essence. Right? That's the core premise, and a lot of the earlier content is very much in line with that core premise. But I think it's kind of just, rather than critiquing tropes, what it has become is more a presentation of its own critiques of tropes in, like, a non-educational fashion. It has in and of itself fallen victim to the thing that it sought to critique in the first place.
Yes, it became the very thing it hoped to destroy, etc., etc.
Yes, no, it's like, as it turns out, some of those early philosopher guys knew what they were talking about. Funny how that happens, huh? Something, even a broken clock is right twice a day.
Yep.
As we've established, and perhaps more with Mill, I don't have a fondness for philosophy. In fact, I have the opposite of a fondness for philosophy.
I don't mind philosophy. I kind of like philosophy, actually.
Nope, don't like it.
Unless the philosophy in question is nihilism, in which case nihilism can go suck an egg.
I thought you were going to say suck a dick.
That too.
In the idiom of sucking an egg, is the implication that eggs are testicles?
Yes, I'm pretty sure.
It's funny because from a biological point of view, that's not necessarily wrong, but it's also very incorrect.
Oh, I know.
Like, I get it from like a structural point of view what people are getting at, but like from a biological point of view, that's like the opposite of correct.
I know.
But yeah, I've become very disillusioned with Oh, okay, here's a thing. I have had to stop reading manhwa
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
because I've told you before, right, how especially Chinese and Korean web novels, less so with Japanese, but incredibly common with Chinese and Korean web novels, where the characters, like male characters, are portrayed as adorable little creatures as children, and then the moment they hit puberty, they turn into
Monsters.
6'9",
Ginormous hunk of
420.
beasts.
Yes, 6'9", 420 pounds of pure muscle, 0% body fat. And it just like they all, especially with the Korean protagonists, the male characters all look the same. The only difference is their hair color.
So something,
have, like-
something I've noticed is that I don't really like sort of the... Maybe I'm generalizing here, but it feels like there's a particular art style for more Korean art, and it's not what I'm a fan of.
No. It's not generalization. I'm pretty sure it's just outright true because a lot of those artists are employed by the same company. Like, I'm pretty sure there's like almost a monopoly going on of webtoon adaptations. Of webtoons. Like, I'm pretty sure there's like 3 companies that employ all of the artists and own all the licenses, and they all try and homogenize their art style as much as possible.
It's like the inverse of the CalArts thing. Or instead of them all going to the same school to learn art, they just
all go to the same
company
employer.
to peddler.
Yeah, it's like that. You're not just seeing things, Mel. That is an actual problem in that industry.
Well, it's a problem I don't like.
Exactly. I don't like... Okay, so I will say there are a few notable exceptions. However, for the most part, and also, they tend to draw the female characters better than the male characters. A lot of the time.
Yeah, because a lot of them are focused on getting that female demographic in, so...
Yes, so they just draw generic hunk of
generic
meat.
pretty boys, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like... I've ranted about this before, but why can't we just have some, like, male leads who are twinks on occasion? You know what?
Because that'd be too easy.
What's frustrating? At the very least, most manga tend to have a more, unless they're like more. Well, no, they're more like young and frail-looking male leads. But even then, a lot of the shoujo and josei manga do have very samey male leads, and also, why do they all have to be generically handsome with like an 8-pack?
Because that's what the audience wants, Fuzzy. Clearly.
As part of the audience, I would like to say that's not what I want. And I refuse
I'm
to
being
believe.
a jackass, Fuzzy. I'm being an asshole.
No, I know, but I refuse to believe that even in the place where it's most egregious in Korea, I refuse to believe that every heterosexual woman is attracted to 6'9", 420 pounds of pure muscle. I refuse to believe that. That cannot be the case where every het woman in Korea is attracted to the same thing.
I mean, given the popularity of K-pop bands, I'm pretty sure they're much more attracted to pretty boy style.
Yeah,
Given,
all
you
of
know.
the problem is the protagonists are pretty boys until they take their shirts off. They're
Oh
pretty
my
boys
God.
from the neck up, and they're like bodybuilders from the neck down. Yeah.
Of course.
But no,
Of
what I was
fucking course.
no, I forgot what I was going to complain about. Then I remembered. Even in, I found that there's even the reverse problem in light novels in Japan, where even for characters who are drawn more like effeminate or something, in the novels that is their source material of the manga, they are described with exaggerated masculinity. Like hard muscles and like big hands. What is it with the big hands?
Yeah.
Like
The Yowie hands? I don't know.
yeah, it's like from what I can tell, the ideal man appears to be 6'9", 420 pounds of pure zero body fat muscle with hands the size of like dinner plates, but also long bony fingers.
So like a baseball mitt, basically.
Yes. Well, I would say more like Jack Skellington, honestly. Like, they want bodybuilders with the faces of teenage boys and the hands of Jack Skellington. That is not something I find in any way attractive, even from a purely aesthetic point of view.
Yeah, no, neither do I. But again, I'm not into guys, so.
Yes, you're the most. Jack. Are
You're the
you a
token
cishet
straight.
white man?
I think I am. Maybe.
Oh my god.
Also, out of the three of us, you're the token straight.
Mm-hmm.
That
I get
is
that.
true. No, the subject of Arrow-Ace representation, I'm pretty sure our cast has more Arrow-Ace representation than the average, like, the majority of media, considering the fact that, like, a good 2/3 of it, plus at least one of our regular guests, is somewhere in that vicinity.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a thing, I guess, we can be proud of.
And yet so often the topic turns to sex.
Well, that's because... Well, it's...
I actually saw something funny about that on a Tumblr post, which was basically that people, asexuals can talk about sex so readily and so happily because they don't have to worry about actually going for sex because they have no interest in it.
There's definitely a couple...
There's definitely a component of that, because it's like, I'm coming at this from the perspective of an outsider looking in. So, like, a lot of the time when I'm talking about like, the thirsty degenerate stuff, a lot of the time it comes from a place of genuine curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just something that's, like, it's harder to talk about for people who actually, like, engage in it or want to engage in it.
There's definitely at least one or two artists that I follow who are basically asexual and are like, yeah, this sort of helps. I don't get like aroused at the art that I make.
I mean, yeah. So funny thing about if we're talking about erotic art, I do want to say a funny thing I've heard about on the internet that I haven't witnessed it directly, but I've heard a lot about it.
Mm.
And it's that furries commissioning art tend to tend to have very deep wallets, apparently, because a lot of them work in tech. So, and apparently, in addition to that, like, they tend to have a lot of really good tech skills.
Mm.
Like, straight up holding,
I do think that's a
holding-
bit of a generalization. I think
but
it's an observation bias thing where
almost
people tend to think that because the only furries who tend to commission art frequently are the ones that are already wealthy.
that's
So-
definitely possible. I just do
Yeah.
find it funny as something that's a possibility that's been brought up.
I do think there's some sample bias at play there, but no. I was also going to say on the subject of erotic art, I have to imagine that for non-asexual artists of erotic art, after a certain point, I think they just become inoculated because it's not like they can just, even if they can imagine it clearly, it's not like they can just spit out the art. They have to spend like hours and hours working on it, and I feel like after a certain point, they just like get sick of it.
Yeah.
It's one thing to like look at a picture and like your brain sends the information from your eye, like your eyes send the information to your brain and your brain processes it in like a fraction of a second, whereas with an artist you are painstakingly translating from brain to page over the course of many hours and like having to worry about like the details and like the colors and the shades and everything, and after a certain point I think you just like burn yourself out on erotic art. I'm sure it doesn't happen for everyone, but I think like I wouldn't be surprised if some of the biggest hentai artists just aren't that horny anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw this thing, and I'm trying to find if I took a screenshot of it. I don't think I did, but I saw this thing about someone who was just like honestly, I kind of understand where artists of horny art are coming from now, because sometimes it's just out of their hands. Because I was commissioned to draw a wasp, and I had to draw a rack on the wasp and eyelashes to show that she's a girl wasp, and I'm tired now.
Right? Like you also have to take into account, yeah, people are weird.
Yeah,
Like-
and the thing is, like, not the artists don't always have control over it. Sometimes they're being commissioned to draw this shit.
Yes, that was what I was getting at, is like sometimes they just get commissioned by horny people who are horny in a completely different way from what they're into, and they kind of just have to live with that for the rest of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's one of those things. Also, we have completely, and I'm quite happy about this, but we did completely tangentialize our way away from the Immortal's Dilemma, and there was actually a point I was trying to make with that. But I'm glad we managed to go on such a wild tangent. But I would like to go back to that for a second. I would like to posit that the Immortal's Dilemma is a consequence of sapience. And so I would also like to pose a question. I said the first thing before I started talking about the Immortal's Dilemma is that I want to talk about dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And my question is, would a dog, or really any other animal that is like not strictly sapient, be as affected by the Immortal's Dilemma? Because I know they have emotional attachments and they can grieve, and they do grieve and mourn. Like, I know that dogs will just die of sadness. So maybe dogs aren't the best example. Look, we don't talk about. Look, don't give specific examples. That will just make us sad. But I do know that dogs whose owners die before them will just actually die of sadness.
Now I'm thinking of that one episode of Futurama.
Look. Again, don't give specific examples. It'll make us sad.
Look, that episode made me cry my fucking eyes out, okay?
Yes,
I am not going to not bring that up.
Anyone with a heart cried their eyes out at that episode. Anyone who's not a complete sociopath. I have sociopathic tendencies, and that episode made me cry.
Yep.
But that episode was designed to make people cry.
Yes, it was.
It was like a dick move, honestly. But, no. Let's not use dogs as an example, because dogs are too emotionally involved with people.
I still can't watch Marley and Me.
God, don't... I made the mistake of watching that movie as a child.
I was forced to watch it at school.
Oh, God.
I'm not gonna watch that movie. It's just... No, I can't make myself watch that movie.
Yeah, but no, what I'm trying to say is, let's get off the depressing topic for a moment. I mean, you brought up a gecko. Would a gecko be as affected by the Immortal's Dilemma?
Hard to say, because again, they don't have sapience, so I don't know if they can comprehend it.
Yes, and that's why I'm saying the Immortal's Dilemma, or you know what? Let's even look at it from this perspective. Would a sociopath be as affected by the Immortal's Dilemma?
Probably not.
No, I would posit they would. For a simple reason.
Oh?
Sociopaths can still feel boredom. And there's only a finite number of things to do. So
I mean, you say that, but things have evolved so much in just the past 100 years alone that you'll never run out of things to do.
Now. But let's say that the sociopath was born in the ancient times.
Are you going on to Nicodemus?
Huh?
Are you coming on to Nicodemus?
I would hope he's not coming on to Nicodemus. That's a very bad person to flirt with.
Oh my.
Look.
I saw my shot and I shot it.
Look. Little Nicky is a garbage person and I have standards. So I would... No matter how much hot dad energy Little Nicky has, I would not debase myself.
No way!
The correct soundboard was "Don't you put that evil on me," by the way.
Don't you put that evil on me!
I mean, either one works, in my opinion, but that's just me.
Yeah, but Little Nicky is evil, so, you know. But yeah, no.
Put that evil on you, literally, yes, I get that.
Yes. So no, but I actually wasn't even thinking of Nicodemus because I found myself, like, not thinking about the Dresden Files as much of late. I don't know, I just, like... Peace talks and Battleground kind of soured me.
I can kind of get that, but...
On the Dresden Files. Like... I think, with the exception of... And even with changes and cold days, it was somewhat understandable. But I think Peace Talks and Battleground, and I'm lumping them in as one because they were initially supposed to be one book, is the closest the Dresden Files has come to just outright despair porn. And I just... It crossed a few lines for me that that have made me... I'm still going to read the rest of the series just because I've already read like 17 books and I'm not going to stop now. I'm going to read the rest of the series, but I've just been soured on it. Like, I think 16 and 17 just crossed a few too many lines, especially coming off of 15, which was like one of the most uplifting books in the series. And which is probably why Butcher decided to cross many lines, because 15 was so uplifting. I can't like bring the same passion for it that I once did. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I kind of get what you're saying.
Just like two characters in particular, other than Harry, just got shafted, in my opinion. In like the
We can
worst
discuss
possible
it
way.
in detail when we get to actually discussing the books.
Hmm.
Speaking of which, we should probably set up a podcast for that at some
Yeah,
point.
my brother in Christ, we are only at like book
We
7.
did changes last.
Wait, have we already done changes?
Yes.
Yeah, you don't remember.
Jack, I don't remember what I had for lunch yesterday. How am I supposed to remember when?
Fuzzy, I also have garbage memory. That is not an excuse.
I mean, it's kind
My
of an
memory
excuse.
is very weird and selective.
Yeah, no, it's like my memory is also weird and selective, and that is not one of the things that was selected. I have no control
fair
over
enough.
what's selected. But yeah, okay, we are closer to it than I thought. It's really like telling where Ghost Story, as in the book where Harry is literally dead, is a more hopeful and uplifting book than Peace Talks and Battlegrounds. Like, God, those two were rough.
They were. Won't deny that.
But yeah, I've been. But yeah, I think there are two things that make up the Immortal's Dilemma. Two components: emotion and the capacity to feel boredom. And I feel like the emotions dilemma, the Immortal's Dilemma, would not affect someone as negatively if they were missing those two things.
What, the ability to be attached and the ability to be bored?
Yes.
Well, yeah. Because at certain points, and I actually am planning on writing a character connected to this idea. At certain points, like, either you feel bored, you have no empathy, but you do have the capacity to feel boredom, and thus you have there are a few ways you can turn, but one of them would be just like an utterly depraved hedonist who cares for nothing but feeling good. Or if you get to a point where you don't even feel boredom, you just become numb to everything and just feel nothing.
Yeah, so
Extreme.
but I do have like evidence for these two things because, as I said, I don't think dogs can feel bored. They're kind of like very chill animals that can derive joy from literally anything. But they have very rich emotional bonds.
Oh yeah, no, 100%.
And so a dog would be horribly affected by the Immortal's Dilemma, and sociopaths who have no emotional bonds but the capacity to feel boredom would also be horribly affected. So, theoretically, a gecko, I think, would not really be particularly bothered, because I think it would just be day in, day out, living life, eating bugs.
Yep, just vibing.
For the immortal gecko, yeah, just vibing.
And you know what? Good for the gecko.
And of course, eventually, cars stopped thinking. So, that's another piece of evidence.
Love that. Love that reference.
Look, y'all, you gotta tie it back to. You have to always tie it back. Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Had
Jeff.
to.
Well, no, that's why that thing that's there on the soundboard. You have to always either tie it back to JoJo's or what's its face.
You have to tie it back to
One
one of three things. You have to tie it back to JoJo, One Piece, or Lord of the Rings.
But by one might argue that by tying it back to JoJo's or One Piece, you're tying it back to Lord of the Rings.
I mean, Lord of the Rings is basically the forefather of all modern fantasy, or at least the majority of it.
Were you guys aware of the One of One ring? The $2 million Magic the Gathering. So, okay, it's a Magic the Gathering thing.
Okay.
Magic the Gathering has done a tie-in with Lord of the Rings, and has released an official expansion of Magic the Gathering cards featuring Lord of the Rings characters.
Okay.
And you know how there's foils and limited editions of cards, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There is a One Ring card, but that's just a general card. However, a special serialized limited edition One Ring was printed. And it's the One of One Ring because only one has been printed and will ever be printed. And it's just it was just in a pack somewhere.
So it's basically like the golden ticket, except even
It's
rarer.
the golden ticket. Yes, it is exactly the golden ticket. Except even rarer because there's only one of them. And it was found recently, like a few days ago, and it was found within an hour's drive of me.
That is funny.
Yeah, I was even considering that I'll like go to a local card shop and like just buy a few packs just for just for the sake of it, just for fun. And then I realized, oh, if I just drove a bit further, I would have had a legitimate chance of pulling the One Ring. But yes, no, the opening bid was over $2 million.
Holy fuck!
Yep.
Because it's the only one.
Magic the Gathering nerds are hardcore, Jesus.
Yeah, it was a guy in like a wealthy collector in Spain. The opening bid was more than $2 million and an all expenses paid vacation to their private estate in Spain.
Hold on, are we sure this isn't related to the unbearable weight of massive talent?
The what now?
The Nick Cage movie with Pedro Pascal that came out last year. I watched it recently, so it's on my mind.
I have no idea what that is, so I'm assuming the answer is no. It's like
Basically, wasn't it like a parody of Nick Cage's life?
Kinda, yeah. So what the deal is with that one is that it basically has Nick Cage as being down on his luck, and he gets an offer from a character played from a millionaire played by Pedro Pascal, who basically offers him $1 million to visit his birthday party because he's a Nick Cage super fan, and they develop a close friendship over the course of the movie, and then it escalates into ridiculousness. No, they do not bang, but there's a lot of homoerotic subtext.
lame.
Nick Cage does kiss himself at one point.
Okay, that makes it slightly better. Oh god, the words Nick Cage self-fest just popped into my mind, and I know in my heart of hearts
It is canon to that movie. It is canon to that movie. Nick Cage makes out with a hallucination of himself.
Yeah, but I have to imagine that it was a thing long before the movie came out.
Oh, I would not be shocked.
But yeah, so, the One of One Ring was found in the vicinity of Whitby, Ontario, which is like an hour's drive from Toronto.
That's neat.
But also, the dude who found it, and I think this is the worst part, we don't know their identity because obviously they're remaining anonymous, but the implication from some of the information we have is that the dude isn't even like a fan of MTG or Lord of the Rings or like a nerd or anything. He just heard about it from his cousin who is a nerd and just bought some packs on a lark and got it.
That was so fucking funny.
Kind of
It's
fucking
funny,
annoying.
yes, thank you, Mill, for
Oh yeah,
understanding
no, I
my
can see
tone.
why it'd be annoying, but I do find it hilarious also.
But yeah, but yeah, the first thing, like, he was very smart about it. He pulled it, then he told no one, put it in a safe deposit box in a bank, and then contacted a lawyer, and then contacted the official grading authority, who graded it as Mint 9, which I'm pretty sure is the highest grading for a collectible card, and then sealed it and preserved it. And now he's also like only receiving offers through a marketing firm while lawyered up and remaining anonymous. So he did, in fact, approach it from the smartest possible direction. And I think it's probably because he's not like a super turbo nerd. Because I'm sure there are people who, if they pulled it, would immediately post it on Twitter and then be robbed within hours.
Oh yeah,
Because
no, it
people
is
would-
probably for the. It is almost certainly for the best that the person who got the card is not a hardcore Magic the Gathering nerd.
Yeah, because like a hardcore nerd would absolutely just get killed for it. Like this is
I don't know if I
definitely
get killed for that, but definitely get robbed for it for sure.
there are absolutely people who will kill for $2 million plus.
Okay, yeah,
Remember,
that's fair.
$2 million is the starting bid. It's going to go to the highest bidder. It's basically an informal auction at this point.
Well, it's gonna hit another. It's gonna increase by at least tenfold by the time the bidding's done.
Yeah, because like the minimum bid that the minimum offer they're accepting is $1 million.
Yeah, it's gonna be at least 10 million, if not like 20 million, if not 50.
It won't go that high, simply because I think it's simply because there's not enough wealthy card collectors, right? Like
Fair
there's
enough.
a lot of rich people, but not every rich person is going to have an MTG habit, right? Like,
Okay, slightly different topic. If you were to time travel, you had the ability to time travel, and you wanted to use it to get rich quick, what do you think would be the most effective way to do so?
Putting a
Outside of, like, stocks.
putting a bunch of money on Leicester to win the Premier League in 2015-16.
yeah, sports
Sports
gambling
betting is a
definitely
viable
one.
option.
Sports betting is a viable option. Honestly,
One option I saw online was purchasing a bunch of first edition comic books, stashing them away somewhere.
yeah, first edition
Make them
comic
secure.
books and first edition cards. Like, do you want to know the most boring option?
What?
Just an investment fund at a bank that still existed back then, and you'll just get rich off the interest.
Oh, doing the
I
fry.
think I did say outside of financial bullshit like stocks.
Okay,
and
yeah.
stuff, but-
No, mine would absolutely be MTG, right? Like, I would absolutely, like...
I mean, I would just buy a
Apart
bunch of. I would buy just a bunch of first edition comic books and
yeah,
like.
first edition comic books and... First edition... Well, it depends on how far back you go, right? Because,
I
like...
mean, like
what
Action
people-
Comics 1, Detective Comics 1, Amazing Fantasy 1 through 7.
Well, no, because you're going to have to adapt based on what timeline, what time frame you're at. Also, remember, a lot of these strategies only work if you're white. Like, if you're going back in time to, like, if you're not a white person going back in time, or if you're going back in time to a place or time where there's not a lot of, like, white people or people of color, you're gonna have to improvise.
That's why my one works. 'Cause all you gotta do is gotta go back to basically July, August 2015, put like all your money on Leicester at 5,000 to 1, and that's it. You're rich.
Yeah, but, like, honestly, do you know
Also,
what
if you-
another... Yes,
Some
go
things
on.
to consider when you're going back in time. the money you're bringing with you, you should make sure it's not like, made at a date later than where you're going to.
I mean, honestly, you're best off either bringing gold or bartering goods,
Mm.
right? Like, because gold has been pretty universal. But that is actually the other thing I was going to say. If you go back to, like, the distant past, one of the more effective options might be to, like, barter something. It might be, like, assuming you can defend yourself, it might be to bring something that you can barter for a stupidly obnoxious price in gold to whoever's living there,
Mm-hmm.
and then just bury the gold somewhere that you can easily find it, and then just dig it up in the future.
The issue is, throughout human history, we've been very, very good at digging shit up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, it's simple. You just need to look at places where there have not been large-scale digs.
I guess. I mean,
Right? Like,
my idea would just be to go back and get Jesus' autograph.
well, but no. The problem is, you'd have to do the same thing. You'd have to bury it somewhere, because otherwise they'd just say it's a fake because the paper wouldn't be old enough.
Weird and possibly controversial question. Do you think Jesus was literate?
It's not impossible, because I'm pretty sure while literacy was not great, I do think there were enough, I believe there were literate people among his followers, so it wouldn't have been impossible to learn. Like, he would have had literate people in his surroundings who could teach him.
Yes.
And that's barring divine intervention, which is a total
That's true.
other
That
thing
is true.
entirely.
Also, actually, come to think, I'm pretty sure one of the 12 disciples was a tax collector. So
Yeah, so no, like, there would have been, and even then, like, a carpenter is not, like, a carpenter was, like, basically, like, closer to middle class than lower class back in the day, right? So, like,
oh yeah, no, absolutely. It's
So
just
a
literacy
carpenter would
rates
have-
in general back in the day were much lower than they are
true,
nowadays.
but, like, I believe a carpenter would have the capacity in early life to learn or be taught.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like,
We probably should wrap up soonish.
yes, it is about time.
Oh. I've basically
We
been
have been
sat
going for about 2 hours.
Yeah, I've basically been sat on a bench for like the last few minutes just because I'm getting sick of dying.
You've done pretty well, actually.
We can, in fact, find an entirely different game to talk over from now on, because I'm pretty sure you don't have to force yourself to finish Hollow Knight, no.
As I said, I'm not going to do it on stream anymore.
Yeah, no, I think this was our last Hollow Knight stream, so...
Yeah.
For those of you who came here for the Hollow Knight gameplay, first of all, but why? That's something we need to add to the soundboard, is the Ryan Reynolds, Van Wilder, but why?
Mm-hmm.
We have to add that to the soundboard.
I mean, we do have a similar one, of course, but it's not quite the same, you know?
Yes.
It's more like...
Yes. Walked right into that one. But I feel like those two have very different tones. Like, that one is more of a...
bit more melodramatic and hammy.
And it's more of a... more inquisitive, whereas the Ryan Reynolds variation is more just disbelieving.
Deadpan. Yeah.
Yeah, not deadpan, but it's like, one of them is, like, curious, and the other one is, like, disbelieving and flabbergasted.
Mm-hmm.
They come from different emotional resonances.
Yep.
1 second. Just let me server settings. Soundboard. Upload sound. Choose a file. Downloads. Let's bring it
Oh
down.
boy. Barbie movie's coming up soon. I'm excited for that.
And bit too quiet.
Thank you. It's a bit
Yeah,
quiet,
too
but
quiet.
it's serviceable. Also, is there a limit to how many soundboard things a server can have?
8.
24. 28. Right.
No, 8.
Oh, right.
Nitro
Right.
boosting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I nitro boosted the other server, so
Yeah. But
Yeah,
yeah,
we should
otherwise-
this up.
yeah, thank you for joining us, everyone. Jack's back. Insert Samurai Jack theme song here.
Back to the past. Back to the past, Samurai Jack.
But yeah,
Thank you everybody for watching. Hopefully you've had a good time. We've been talking about a variety of topics as we always do when Fuzzy's around.
what I'm here for.
Yep, no, that's your role, and we are very grateful for it. In terms of future stuff, Thursday, no idea what's going to happen Thursday.
Probably
Saturday,
depend on Ben's availability.
possibly. Saturday will be the spring anime wrap-up and awards show.
Fun times.
Sunday, we should be getting back to D&D, hopefully. I really hope so.
That's the plan.
I want to play D&D, damn it. And next Tuesday, we'll be back with something or other, depending on availability. Maybe something story-based, maybe something just me playing it mindlessly in the background. Who knows? But otherwise, again, thank you everybody for watching. Please do give us a follow here on Twitch, and if Twitter survives, on Twitter, storytime_net. It is dying a death of 1,000 cuts at the moment.
Also, if you're watching this on
Hilarious
YouTube,
watch from the outside.
if you're watching this on YouTube, give us a like and/or subscribe. Click the bell and all that YouTuber feel. You don't have to click the bell, honestly. Just like give us a like or a subscribe. That's fine.
That'd be nice. That'd be nice.
Yeah, because as we've learned, Jack, we actually get a lot more views on YouTube than we do on Twitch.
I'm not shocked, honestly.
So yeah,
I wouldn't say a lot more views, but at this point, it is rarer for us to get a video on YouTube that doesn't have at least a few views. So
yeah, so if you are
I
watching
mean,
this on YouTube,
I have no
give
idea
us,
how
like-
I have no idea how long those people are watching. So
yeah, we can probably look at retention metrics at some point. Especially because we have the worst format of videos on YouTube, which is the long, continuous ones.
Actually, long ones tend to get a lot of engagement. You either get a lot of engagement from either really long ones or the really short ones. Like mid-length
But,
videos are the worst ones.
Yeah, if you're watching this on YouTube, maybe give us a follow on Twitch. You don't have to watch the stream, just like give us a follow, and maybe one day we'll hit affiliate. One day, maybe.
but anyway,
but yeah,
again, thank you for
everyone
watching,
joining in.
and hopefully we will see you on Thursday for our next stream. Good night.
Bye bye.
Later.